Excellent. Thank you, Amber.
Yeah, no problem.
So we are live, and I'll take this moment before everybody joins the meeting. I just want to take a moment to apologize to the public, specifically for the challenges that we had at our previous council meeting, and we've retooled our system of doing things a little bit, and hopefully this will be a much more streamlined meeting with all possible credit to Ms. Amber Strazo and Mr. Bernard Harris for getting us set up with a new system. So thank you to you both.
No problem. Just a quick note, we anticipated a lot of what could or could not happen, but I appreciate everyone's patience as we figure this out. I might have questions and stuff, so that's all. Thanks. So it looks like we're still waiting for a couple of people. As they come in, I'll add them in.
Amber, it's Jess. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
I don't see it live streaming on YouTube yet.
Okay, let me check.
That's just wanting to make sure that we get that clear.
It shows it on my end.
I just got
now it's up.
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry, Amanda.
I think there's a little more of a lag.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. We are just waiting for a couple members of council that we know are planning to attend the meeting who may be having additional technical difficulties. They should be on shortly, and as soon as they are, we'll get started. Thank you for your patience. It is 7:41. Ms. Strazo, were other members of the administration planning to join this meeting? Do you know?
That might be a better question for Bernie.
You're on mute, Bernie.
I think Douglas is going to be joining us later.
Yeah, I'm not seeing him right now. He was in.
It was in.
And possibly Chris Delves.
All right.
I don't think Chris is joining. Douglas will be in his stead.
Right. I see Douglas is there. Were either the mayor or her chief of staff planning on joining us this evening?
Yes.
Jess is tuning in. I don't think the mayor is.
Right.
Okay. Well, in that case, I believe Councilor Soto was planning to join, but we will try to, we'll make all reasonable efforts to get him online here. But with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, hey, everyone, I would like to welcome you to the July 28th committee meeting of Lancaster City Council. I currently have 7:42 p.m. I apologize for the delay, but we're going to get started. I hereby call this meeting to order. Mr. Harris, if you would please call the roll of members.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Arroyo.
Aye. Here.
Ms. Bakay.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz. You're muted.
Here.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Here.
Mr. Soto. And President Smith Waddell.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Before we go any further, I would like to let the public know that at 7 p.m. this meeting, council convened an executive session, which terminated at about 7:30 p.m. To discuss a personnel matter regarding complaints that were made against a city employee. We were informed on that matter by the administration and concluded without taking any specific action. Thank you. Approval of the minutes for the meeting of July 14th, 2020. Mr. Harris. Or I guess I'll just hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Council comments? All right, hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Bakay.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
And President Smith Waddell.
Aye. Thank you. Mr. Harris or Ms. Strazo, could we take a moment now to illuminate to the public about how they will participate in public comment in this meeting?
Yes, I can do that. Let me pull up the notes. Okay, so there are a couple of ways, one of which is to join in on Zoom. So anyone who is currently in Zoom as an attendee, during any of the public comment periods, if you'd like to comment, just raise your hand. I can see your name, so I'll call on you and allow you to speak, and then all normal public comment rules apply. Also, you can call in. There's a number listed on the City Council page as well as on the event page that you can phone in and listen, and to raise your hand that way, you'll just dial *9. And the same, unfortunately, you can't adjust your name when you call in, so we'll call on you via your phone number. And then for future meetings, you can also submit comments through our website at cityoflancasterpa.com/public-comment. For anyone who cannot call in through Zoom or phone or chooses not to, you can submit your comments in writing, which Mr. Harris will read into the record.
Excellent, Ms. Strazo. Could you please say aloud the number where participants would call?
Sure. There are a couple of them. So I'll just read off the first one. And if anyone has any issues, they can go to the website and see the other ones. So the first one they list is 646-876-9923.
Okay, 646-876-9923. Is that correct?
Yes. There's about 7 numbers listed. I assume that that's for higher caller volume, so the first one should work. And then they just have to enter the webinar ID and the passcode. The webinar ID is 977-9124-7435. And the passcode is 870288.
Can you read those one more time, Ms. Strazo?
Sure. The webinar ID is 977-9124-7435. And the passcode is 870288. And again, all of this is listed at cityoflancasterpa.com/city-council.
Thank you very much, Ms. Strazo. Otherwise, the public comment rules are as usual. So I'll roll over them briefly. The first public comment period is designated for those who have called ahead, spoken to our city clerk to address council. These comments are limited to 3 minutes in length, and you must begin by giving us your name and the street on which you live. After that, on agenda items, typically the public is given an opportunity to comment. I will hold for about 30 seconds for the public to catch up with the live stream where you have the opportunity for public comment, and you'll be able to engage at that time as well. Finally, at the end of the meeting, there is an open public comment period. This is for those who have not called ahead and for items not currently on the agenda. Again, comments are limited to 3 minutes, and you must start by giving us your name and the street on which you live. Thank you very much for bearing with us. Proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition, Mr. Harris. I believe he said we have none, Mr. President. That's okay. So we now move into the first public comment period. Mr. Harris, do we have anybody that called ahead to make public comment?
Yes, we do, Mr. President. Bo Mora had called ahead to make public comment.
Excellent. Ms. Strazo, is Mr. Mora in the list of participants or in the queue somewhere?
I do not see him as an attendee, no.
All right, well then we will take 30 seconds here to await Mr. Mora's comment.
Mr. Mora, if you are on and perhaps just under a different name, just use the raise hand feature and I'll let you in, but I'm not, it looks like all the names are ones I recognize otherwise.
All right. If we do not have any additional attendees or anyone calling in, Mr. Mora, I am going to ask if you are available, please join to make your public comment at the second public comment period, and we will allow you to make your comment first. Thank you very much. Mr. Harris, do we have any other public comments who called ahead?
We do not, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right. we move into reports requested by council. This evening, we have a public hearing, which is a petition to consider the request of Lancaster General Hospital and Lancaster General Services Business Trust to amend the zoning ordinance to rezone the site at North Queen, North Prince, and West Frederick Streets from hospital complex and R4 to MU, which is mixed use. As president of council, I suppose that this is my authority. So barring anything else, I will go ahead and call the public hearing on that rezoning matter to order, letting the public know that if they take a look at the agenda, they will see the actual action of the ordinance change under the legislative agenda. And here we will be considering it in the hearing, and then we will consider the ordinance change, which is the appropriate place for public comment. Though the public hearing is as well, but on the passage will take place in heading 9, item A. So forgive me for any lack of clarity there, but the meeting is thereby called to order. Is there anyone present to represent either Lancaster General Hospital, the Service Business Trust, or the City of Lancaster in this hearing? Mr. Lyons, I believe it's your time to shine.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over first to Michael Davis of Barley.
Good evening. My name is Mike Davis from Barley Snyder. I am part of the LGH team here on behalf of this rezoning request. Joining me also is Brian Burgess from Penn Medicine, Lancaster General Health, John Lyons from Penn Medicine, Lancaster General Health, and Neil Fisher from the Hankin Group. Just very briefly, I want to give you a roadmap in terms of our presentation. I will be covering a couple of administrative items right up front. Brian Burgess will then provide some history regarding the site and some context for the requested map amendment and rezoning request. I will then walk through the legal justification and appropriateness of the rezoning request. And then John Lyons will detail how this rezoning request dovetails with and furthers various initiatives that LGH is pursuing in the city. Once we conclude that portion, then our whole team will be available for any questions that anyone may have relative to the requested rezoning. In terms of, from an administrative standpoint, this is a public hearing under the city's ordinances and also under the municipality's planning code. Therefore, it is in fact being recorded. And because it's a virtual meeting, it's a little bit different than what we're used to. Earlier today, I did have contact with Douglas Smith just to confirm the way that we would be handling exhibits relative to the application. And we are only presenting 2 exhibits this evening. One is our actual request that we made back on March 30th, the formal application that was submitted to the city. And I would just ask that that be marked as applicant's exhibit number 1. And then we have the PowerPoint presentation that we've previously used to the City Planning Commission, and then also in the previous meetings with City Council. And we're going to ask that that PowerPoint presentation be marked as applicant's exhibit number 2. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Brian Burgess for his comments.
And Amber, if you could you just unmute Mr. Burgess? That way he might be able to, if he's unmuted.
Thank you. I'm unmuted, I believe.
Mr. Burgess, please proceed.
Great. John, are you going to put the presentation up?
Yes, and sorry, Amber. And then Neil Fisher will need to share his screen.
Okay, at this point, I think all panelists should have the ability to share.
He's working. Yeah. Okay.
Great. While he's doing that, I just wanted to thank you for hearing us again tonight. We're going to do a brief presentation, and I'm going to speak more about the history of the site itself and the direction that we're taking this project in going forward. So I'll just get started while we're waiting for the presentation to come up. The site was originally acquired by Lancaster General back in 2004. And as you'll be able to see when we show the map, one of the reasons it was acquired is it's a contiguous site to our overall property, our main campus on Duke Street, and is directly across from the employee garage. We thought this would be an excellent area because of its contiguous nature to expand healthcare services within the community. And we've held onto the site since then. We did invest pretty significantly in site cleanup, including the demolition of the then YMCA at the site, which we located around the corner, and put in a small sort of park and some surface parking as we held this site over time. So if we can go to the next slide. So our thinking about the use of the site has changed a little bit over time. For one, we, along with Franklin and Marshall and other city and community partners, invested in the Northwest Corridor project, which culminated in the development of the Lancaster Behavioral Health Hospital. And so some of our needs for healthcare services were met with that property, which is proximate but not contiguous to the hospital campus. But we still have additional demands for healthcare services within the community. And we look to other uses of that site which might meet a community need. And what we settled on was the development of the site as a mixed use site, which would include residential, retail, and some healthcare. And the idea behind the site and what we were looking to develop was a health focused campus. And so while there would be residential and retail, we wanted to find a developer that shared our vision with the site and would enable us to develop it with that sense. And so we ended up doing an RFP process, and we selected a developer named Hankin. There's a number of reasons why we picked Hankin. Hankin, one, has long-term development of similar projects elsewhere in the area, predominantly in Chester County and other counties close to Philadelphia. They received numerous awards for those developments. And they also, which isn't on the slide, they tend to hold their projects for a long time. And so Lancaster General's been in the community for 125 years. We intend to be here for 125 more. And we were looking for a developer that would not only share our vision for a health-related mixed-use development, but also that would be a long-term partner with us in that project. And so we did select Hankin. They've been helping us currently with the pre-development work, including this zoning change, and ultimately will be the firm that develops the property. Mike?
Thank you, Brian. And as I indicated, my portion of the presentation will really focus on emphasizing the consistency of the rezoning request with the existing city and county planning documents. And hopefully this portion of the presentation also ends up making it clear that what we're really offering to do and looking to do here really will knit together and further strengthen the surrounding neighborhood to the subject property. And Neil, if you don't mind, could you take us to the current zoning slide? Thank you. With regard to this request, I should point out that there are 8 properties that are subject to the request. And if you look at the red dotted line that Neil is currently pointing out, that basically ends up showing the perimeter of the properties that are subject to this rezoning request. All 8 properties are currently owned by LGH and or the LGH related entity. The total property subject to this rezoning request is approximately 3.5 acres. And the existing uses include the temporary park, the open space with parking, a child care center with supporting parking, which is the Owl Hill Learning Center, and an unoccupied commercial space with apartments on the upper floors. As Brian had indicated, the former YMCA property was purchased by LGH back in 2004 in anticipation of extending hospital-related uses to the site. In 2012, LGH requested that the former YMCA site be rezoned from R4 to hospital complex to accommodate such development of the site. And the city approved that request in March of 2012. We just bring that to your attention because at several of the previous meetings, there had been questions raised regarding what the previous zoning of the property was before it went to hospital complex, and it was R4. As Brian indicated, subsequent to the 2012 rezoning of the property to hospital complex, LGH and F&M undertook the Northwest Gateway project, and that project took off some of the pressure from this particular site to be used specifically for hospital uses. Also, obviously, some changes in the healthcare industry ended up making it so that it relieved some pressure on the property as well. If you look at the current zoning map here, one of the things that I would end up pointing out is if you look to the south and to the west of the property, you can see that you already have mixed use zoning that basically abuts the site. And as you would go further down beyond Clipper Stadium, you would actually tie into the Northwest Gateway property that I just mentioned, the Meds and Eds campus that was developed by LGH and F&M. And I would just point out that all of that property is also zoned mixed use. With regard to the current zoning, if you look at slide number 6, you'll notice that 6 of the 8 properties, those that were part of the former YMCA property, are currently zoned hospital complex. And that's the purple bluish color that you see on the slide. And 2 of the 8 properties are currently zoned R4. So therefore, the vast majority of the acreage to be rezoned is currently hospital complex. I would point out that the HC district is very limited in terms of what it allows, and it really focuses on hospital-specific primary uses. Therefore, you'll find that there are no permitted residential uses in the HC district. I mean, it was clearly established to accommodate hospital uses. And if you don't mind, Neil, could we now go on to slide number 7? This particular slide shows the proposed zoning. And I would just point out that with regard to mixed use zoning, it allows much greater flexibility in terms of the redevelopment of the site. It permits and facilitates a mix of residential, commercial, and institutional uses to be developed on the site. Some of those uses are supportive of LGH's existing operations, like a medical office building or an administrative office. And I would just like to point out that LGH anticipates that a medical office building for LGH's use will be part of any mixed use development that occurs on this rezoned site. I would also note that the mixed use facilitates supportive uses to the existing neighborhood, and that once again, this is another benefit that we see. It would support commercial uses and also additional housing and apartments. The definition of mixed use district specifically provides that the MU district includes undeveloped land where new mixed use residential and non-residential development with traditional neighborhood character is recommended. That statement speaks to exactly what LGH and Hankin are proposing to do with the subject property if it's rezoned. I would point out that the mixed use district permits nearly every type of housing permitted in the city. It's the only district for 2-family units outside of the central business district. And it's the only district for live work units outside of the central business district. MU district also permits a very wide range of commercial services and retail uses. Therefore, from our standpoint, we look at this and say that the mixed use district really encourages future development of the site to be more consistent with the existing surrounding uses of the site. And therefore, we view it as being a logical extension to extend the mixed use district to this property. Next, I'd like to just briefly talk about the consistency with existing city and county planning documents. And I'm going to start first with the county's planning documents, which is Places 2040, which was adopted in 2018. I would note that the county planning staff reviewed and recommended our submission, and that via a May 18th, 2020 memo recommended approval of the rezoning. And that the County Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval for the rezoning request at its May 26, 2020 meeting, and followed that up with a letter on May 27th to the city recommending approval of the project. In looking at consistency with the city's comprehensive plan, I would point out that the city staff reviewed and presented a PowerPoint presentation to the City Planning Commission on June 3rd, confirming consistency of LGH's request with both city and county planning documents. Specifically, as related to the city's comprehensive plan, which was adopted back in 1993, that plan calls for support of mixed use development of retail, service, and other commercial uses within neighborhoods. And obviously what we're proposing to do here is consistent with that goal. The comprehensive plan also indicates that we should encourage job creation through allowing flexible development sensitive to the needs of business. And again, we think what we're proposing here ends up meeting that goal as well. Next, we look at the City of Lancaster's Economic Development Strategic Plan for 2015 through 2030, and that's the Building on Strength Plan. That particular plan notes that for the development of the 400 through 800 blocks of North Queen Street, that we should consider additional restaurant and retail uses to build on the 300 block, that we should look to support employees and visitors to LGH, that we should look to extend the Queen Street Commercial District from downtown out to the train station. And again, we think what we're proposing to do here will help facilitate that goal. The Building on Strength plan specifically speaks to this site, and there it indicates that the city should work with LGH to encourage restaurant and retail uses on the lower levels of any new infill development and create a vibrant, walkable, mixed-use destination. And again, that is the very vision that LGH and Henkin have for this property if it ends up getting rezoned. With regard to the Growing Together, a comprehensive plan for Central Lancaster County, which was adopted back in 2007, if you look at the future land use map under that plan, it actually designates this subject property as mixed use and institutional. So once again, this request is consistent with the Growing Together plan. And as I had previously indicated, it's also consistent with the county's comprehensive plan as well. At the City Planning Commission meeting, we made a brief presentation, and the City Planning Commission then followed that up with a unanimous recommendation for approval to City Council of the zoning map amendment. And I believe that City Planning Commission then issued a follow-up letter on June 18th, recommending approval and attaching letters of support from both the County Planning Commission and from the Lancaster City Alliance. I would also point out, as is its practice, prior to the meeting at the County Planning Commission and the City Planning Commission, LGH, through John Lyons, reached out to its neighbors to make them aware of this request and offered to answer any questions that they might have. Only one neighbor contacted LGH, and the inquiry was not an objection to the rezoning, but instead focused on the specific future use development of the site and what that might look like. Clearly, those specifics are not yet finalized, and they will be subject to separate public meetings and hearings regarding any future land development of the site. And with that, I'm going to end up turning it over to John just to speak a little bit about some of the LGH initiatives and how those initiatives are consistent with this rezoning request.
Thanks, Michael. It's good to see everyone again, albeit virtually. As Brian Burgess, my colleague, indicated earlier in our presentation, we believe the Queen Street project has great potential to advance our broad efforts to align with and support the city's strategic plan. You might recall that your plan focuses on 4 broad goals of strong neighborhoods, safe streets, secure incomes, and sound government. And in the area of strong neighborhoods, this project would further expand access to affordable quality medical care, particularly outpatient and physician services and other initiatives that improve overall health. And by offering housing options, we hope that both current and future LGH employees would reside in this expanding neighborhood, ensuring that those who work in Lancaster City stay and invest further in Lancaster City. The continued growth and vibrancy of the North Queen Street corridor is important to LGH and our employees, and as our history and future are intertwined in many ways. It's that spirit that led us to join with Franklin and Marshall nearly 20 years ago to create the Lancaster City Alliance, and we continue to serve as a major supporter of the Alliance, in part because of their focus on strengthening neighborhoods throughout the city. On the topic of safe streets, we believe the interior and exterior design, the potential exterior and interior design of this project present an opportunity to foster connections among residents and their new neighbors, and to promote improved health and overall well-being, both of which are cornerstones for solid neighborhoods. And we look forward to continuing our partnership with Henkin, similar in the ways in which we've worked for decades with dozens of businesses and nonprofit community organizations to address community health concerns and priorities and to strengthen the overall well-being of our community. In the area of secure incomes, LG Health supports the city's workforce of today and tomorrow by prioritizing local purchasing where possible. And not only will this project bring essential jobs into the city, it will increase our overall B Corp economic efforts. We already conduct more than $73 million in business every year with local companies and individuals, and we hope to expand that beneficial footprint by working with our vendors and business partners. In the area of sound government, we recognize that building a healthy community extends beyond solely providing just healthcare. And as mentioned in an earlier city council meeting, if the rezoning goes forward, we would sell the properties involved in this project to Hankin Group. And that sale would then result in those properties being placed back onto the city's tax rolls. And when fully developed, it would substantially increase the property tax revenue generated annually for the city. Now, you're likely already aware that LG Health already provides an annual payment in lieu of taxes to Lancaster City, totaling $1.5 million to help support essential city services. And that funding is in addition to what we already voluntarily pay in property taxes. So we understand how critical it is for cities like Lancaster to continually strengthen its property tax base, and this project would add significantly to that effort. So thank you again for the opportunity to elaborate more on this exciting project, and the team is happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding our request.
First, gentlemen, let me thank you for your multiple presentations to council and to council committees. I think, where to start? So you've done an excellent job of showing how the proposal comports with existing zones and existing plans. I think one thing, and other councilors may chime in as they wish, one thing I'm interested to know is just a little more detail or specifics, again, on what the vision is for any residential developments on these sites, to the degree that you all have that information now. And I know that this is not written in stone, but I would love to hear something on that matter.
Brian, did you want to mention anything, or would you like me to take that question?
No, that'd be great, John. Thank you. So the
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So the mixed use development that we would like to do, we believe that in the most likely location for medical office use is part of the parcel that's most proximate to the existing campus. So that would be the southeast corner of the property. And then we anticipate the northern part of the property closer to Frederick Street to be developed as residential. It's just the way the site most logically lays out. The residential uses itself, we believe we can get pretty good density on the site, likely have retail and restaurants on the ground floor on the streets themselves to be available not only for residents, but also other members of the community nearby. So we think it'll help revitalize. And the other thing we want to do, and this is where we'll need to get creative with Hankin, is to figure out how to develop a campus that retains both in its residential and retail, as well as its medical office uses, some health focus to it. And so we are trying to be innovative in this development, and not only in the provision of medical services in a dedicated building, but the integration of some of those health services into the residential and retail. And so in our discussions with Hankin, we've certainly looked to bring in retail and restaurants that support that vision, and uses that are not only helpful to revitalize in the neighborhood, but that can connect back to Lancaster General's broader mission to improve the health and well-being of the community.
Thank you. And so you've hit a lot of notes for me. I'm going to dig a little deeper on one. You said you thought you could get pretty good density in terms of residential. Do you care to elaborate that? How many units are we talking about? What are you guys thinking about?
I'm going to turn that one. We have Neil from the Hankin Group here. He's probably the best one to answer that question.
Great. Thank you. Hey, Neil.
So Neil's on the other side of the table where I'm sitting. So I don't know if he can, Amber, if your microphone might be on now.
I can turn it on.
He's going to give it a shot. And then if that doesn't work, he'll come on where I'm sitting. we're trying to responsibly social distance as we sit here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Come on over.
So, Mr. Lyons, can you? Okay, is he going to come around? Okay, yeah. So, it's getting some feedback. Thank you. Hey,
Sorry
Mr.
about-
Fisher.
Sorry about that. We're trying to use two computers in the same room.
Oh, not a problem. We know all about technical difficulties over here. Please go ahead.
Okay, so from a residential standpoint, from a density standpoint, we haven't pinned down a number yet, but I would say approximately 200 plus or minus is kind of our target range. And I think we strive for that as a minimum, simply from a management perspective. It helps from the efficiencies of from a staffing standpoint, and to make sure that we're able to provide the amenities within that apartment building for the tenants.
Thank you. And then I know we briefly touched on the subject of like quote unquote affordable housing, and you had responded to that, and I know that's one that's on council's mind all the time. Do you have, and I'm probably digging a little deeper than you're willing to go at this moment, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Sure.
Even with that out of the consideration, though that's not a given, I guess. Do you have a sense of price points, sizes? Like, are we looking at?
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. I'll get. So typically, what we try to do is from an apartment now, one bedroom apartment typically ranges approximately, I'll say 750 square feet. 2 bedroom could go up to about 1,200 square feet. We are studying the Lancaster City marketplace right now, because there may be a desire for some efficiency units. So we're exploring that right now. And so certainly the size of the units will impact the density. If efficiency units are something that are in demand, then that would increase the density, because there would be more units available or more space available. Regarding rents, I think any new construction today is going to charge approximately I'll say $1.75 to $1.90 a square foot in rent. So if you said that on average between 1 and 2 bedroom units, you're probably talking about 1,000 square foot. If your rent is $1.75, that's $1,700 a month. So if there are efficiency units, certainly they will be, less than that. If your efficiency unit may be 450, 500 square feet, in that range. So that would be approximately half of that.
Okay, and this is something obviously that you feel just within. I mean, I think the short version is just sort of within the market of of housing in Lancaster, that you have the market for those price points, and that's viable for residential development.
We do. We think it's actually a great location because of the connection to Lancaster General Hospital, and be able to provide. So the concept of creating a healthy community, right, is something that both Lancaster General and Hankin agree that is something that will set us apart from other places within the city. So what we've done on some of our other projects is we've with some of the open areas or the courtyard areas, we've installed gardens, raised planter beds that the residents can come out, they can grow their own food and interact with the environment that way. We've also implemented programs where we've connected with health services. Not that the health services are being provided in the apartment complex, but yet it's a notification so that it's an awareness program so that you know where you can go, or if there are programs being offered within the hospital that the tenants can be notified, whether it's a blood pressure screening. I'm just using that as an example. But so we want to try to integrate some health related aspects both from services and also with the way the design can interact with the outdoor space. We've also talked about how retail, or call it restaurants, because I really see restaurants as being the type of retail that would want to locate in this area. How they can interact both with the public and with the people who live within the building. So combining indoor and outdoor space to make it usable and desirable for both.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Other questions from council?
Yes, Council President, I do have one, and it might have been covered already, but what are we going to do with parking in that area then? How is that going to be addressed?
Sure. So what we're looking at is structured parking, and the zoning ordinance within the mixed use and does require parking for residential. It requires parking for medical office and parking for restaurants or retail in general. And recognizing that what we're trying to do is to bring a denser project into the area, the way that we would meet the parking needs and requirements is through structured parking. I see that it's actually a component that can link the medical office over into the residential and tie the projects together very nicely.
So how many floors are we planning? Are we looking at here? Six floors of parking garage, or?
No, again, I'm going to say it kind of depends once we get into the architecture of the building, but it could vary 3 to 4.
3 to 4, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And anything below ground?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I do have sort of a question, maybe a statement. I would not be doing my constituents' due diligence if I did not ask specifically if there's going to be, and it doesn't sound like it, any kind of quote unquote affordable housing, because the price point that you've given us so far, although it may be approximate, does not sound like it would be along the lines of what I would consider affordable housing. So at the same time, if you look at the current footprint of that whole area, mixed residential, it is definitely mixed residential at this point of varying different incomes. So for this project not to include, some sort of affordable housing, I kind of have an issue with that.
I'll see if I can answer your question this way. Because we've done several affordable housing projects, and I think I mentioned last time that we actually have an application in with PHFA right now. So basically, the way to build affordable housing is through a program such as the tax credit program put out by PHFA. And here's the reason why. So our project in Phoenixville is going to cost $14 million for 50 units. And rough numbers, it's $280,000 a unit it costs to build. Out of that $14 million, and it's based on the rents, and the rents vary between $280 a month to $1,100 a month. So there's all different rent income levels. Out of that $14 million, the only thing that project can support with those rents is approximately $1.5 million in financing. Everything else goes to the operations of the building. So basically, to build affordable housing, somebody has to pay, or give you the money. So out of that $14 million, $12.5 million is being given to build that project. It's being given through tax credits, and it's being given through the county. So it's very difficult to build affordable housing without a government program.
If I can ask, have any efforts been made to pursue any financing that would allow for lower rents? Because even at the $1.75 a square foot, that seems a little bit above market in this area. So, and I know that's approximate, but has there been any efforts for, collaborative or additional financing that could allow for something like that?
So I know that Lancaster, that you have considered programs in the past as far as LRDAs and have not implemented them at this point. Other than that, it's the PHFA program, which is one, extremely competitive, and two, would limit the size and scope of the project and would not fit on this. I mean, it would divide up the site and the project. You can't intermix.
Thank you for that, Mr. Fisher. Hold on just a second. Mr. Smith, just because it was mentioned, what is the status of the city's LRDA program? I don't believe council's checked in on it in a while. That's for you, Douglas.
Can you hear me okay, Council President?
I can, yes.
Great. I'll just say that the state law around LRDA has very recently changed, and we have not finished our analysis of what the implications would be for this project or others that are pending.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, Council President, I think for me, it's more of a comment and also kind of seconding Councilor Craig's comment and question, because even with the studio apartment, you're talking about someone, if we're saying 30% is going, they need to make about $32,000. And if we're looking at your $1,000, I mean, your 1,000 square footage, it's like $70,000 that they would have to be making, which is far below our median household income. So I definitely agree with Councilor Craig that when we are considering changing zoning, especially zoning that it's going to include housing, it's a matter of who the housing is going to benefit. I don't necessarily think that's a conversation at this time, like you're mentioning. What's your name again? I apologize.
Neil.
I don't think it's necessarily a conversation about the expectations of you, but I think it's a conversation that we should have internally, especially given Douglas's comment about when we do change zoning, what is our expectation, looking at a holistic kind of plan, because also a lot of what was presented to us was based off of a plan that we as a body did not decide on, and that we are also in the process of making a new plan, if that makes sense.
I'm sorry, I actually did not follow you.
Well,
so
go ahead.
For me, I think it was more for our body in itself, is that we kind of are asking you about what are you doing about affordable housing? And you're coming back at us with saying that given the measures in place, you could not build something less than what you are doing. And so I'm kind of affirming that I'm hearing you and saying that that's a question for us to take into consideration. What exactly are we asking of people that are coming before us for a zoning change that will include housing? Because if our expectation is affordable housing, then we also need to consider things like LRDA in order to understand what can be built. Because to me, it's really important that if we are making these zoning changes with the intention that the housing that goes up is affordable to those that are currently here, we kind of need to do more digging within ourselves and have more conversations, because I'm hearing from you that what we're asking of you with affordable housing just cannot be done.
You are correct.
Other council comments or questions?
I have a question, President.
Councilor Diaz, please.
Can you tell me what the store, how tall or how many floors will there be?
So within the mixed use zoning district, it does limit building height to, going off memory, but I believe it is 60 feet. And 60 feet, you could do 5 stories.
Have you narrowed down how many offices will be there?
How many offices? So within the mixed use, so I kind of see it as a couple of buildings. There could be mixed use, and that's what I'll call where you would see retail or restaurants intermixed with residential. And then medical office, and because medical office really should be a standalone or a separate building from the residential. And that would, as Brian mentioned, be located more in the southwest corner of the property, kind of opposite of the parking structure that is on Lancaster General Hospital's property today.
And at this time, you did mention different types of residents, whether it's a small one-bedroom apartment versus 2-bedroom or an efficiency. So right now you have not narrowed down exactly how many units would be there or how big will they be?
That's correct. We wanted to come before council and hopefully receive a zoning modification prior to fully vesting into the plan and development plan. We'll come back during the land development process with renderings of the building, architectural design, and certainly much more detail as far as the size and quantity of units.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Real quick, Mr. Smith, Douglas, so with all of the processes that have to occur here, after, if council votes to rezone, will this project come before council again in any way per your understanding of the process?
Council President, yes, it would. And I know it would through the historic process. There would be a certificate of appropriateness that would need to be issued for the proposed demolition of the historic tavern, as well as another certificate issued for the new construction. At a minimum, those are the certificates that would need to be approved. At this time, other than a sewer planning module, I'm not immediately aware of any other council approvals that would be needed unless there were construction over the right of way, potentially, in the form of a balcony or such.
Right, okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councilor Baquet?
Everyone's covered my questions. Thank you so much.
Yep. Sorry, I think you made a sound and it lit up your particular screen.
Okay.
Okay, any other council comments for the gentleman from LGH and the Henkin Group or questions this evening?
Mr. President, I have one more, if I may.
Councilor Arroyo, please.
Neil, you had mentioned, or I think Mr. Lyons did, about expanding medical services in that area. Outside of the integration, what other services are you guys potentially looking at?
Brian, is that a question that you would like to answer? Brian, I believe you're on mute.
Thank you. I was just unmuted. Yes, I would like to answer that. So yeah, we have looked at medical services there. One that is probably a given is we currently have a urgent care center located on the other side of the parking deck, the Queen Street parking deck, which is only operating after hours and on the weekends because it's in shared space. So we would very likely relocate the urgent care center to this site. It's a much needed function that is very popular but it was currently working under restricted hours because it's sharing that space with another function within the hospital. Other than that, we've been looking at a number of different ambulatory services, including physician offices and physical and other therapies. And we're currently in the evaluation stage of programming what that building might look like. But it would represent the expansion of services within the community, the relocation of some services, allowing for expansions in other parts of the broader campus, but by and large, bringing new and expanded services to the heart of Lancaster.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Harris. So we've had council questions and comments. We've looked at both the exhibits. What to do about public comment here? We have both the public hearing and the agenda item. I just want to make sure that our conduct is in tip top as we proceed.
I imagine that you could take public comment here, or you could also take public comment at the when the ordinance is read for the second time.
Well, gentlemen, if you let's go ahead and keep you in the hot seat while we have you, and we'll go through it here, or try to get through most of it here. So I will now open up comments from the public. I'm seeing a raised hand in the attendees list. So why don't we go ahead and start with Dr. Kalari, whom I see there, who will be followed by Ms. Tammy Rojas. Can we do that, Ms. Strazo?
Mm-hmm.
Please and thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, Dr. Kalari.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to make a comment. I have 3 main points that I would like to make. One is that a lot of the justification given for why this might be something good and in line with plans that have been made by the county or by the city referred to, and I believe that Congressman Molina, Councilman Molina made this point also, but it was a point that I was going to make, so I'll just reinforce it. Those were plans made some 25 years ago, some 15 years ago, with a vision about economic and community development, which is clearly not appropriate for the conditions that the city faces today. And so a record of activity, according to all plans, doesn't translate into a seal of approval for what the city needs now. The issues now have a lot more to do with gentrification trends happening, affordability issues for people who are being left out, and if the economic crisis keeps on staying in track, those issues are likely to be intensified. So the issue is much more one of affordable housing right now. And I was glad to see many members of council bring that up. It doesn't look like this plan is got anything to do with planning for affordable housing in an area where there are already gentrification trends in place. So I don't blame, F&M, or I don't blame LGH for doing what they wanted to do to redevelop their areas, even though it has taken a lot of public money for them to do what they needed to do. But, that's their private interest. But I think council is looking out for the interests of the people who are being left behind. And so that's the criterion on which the issue is to be adjudicated, I think. Second, I think that it's a comment that I made last time, and I want to repeat. There is something unseemly in my mind about universities, including my own employer, Franklin and Marshall College, and certainly LGH, becoming real estate developers, economic developers, developers of commercial spaces and corridors. I don't think that that's why they get not-for-profit status, but they have been doing that kind of stuff, and they have been producing the trends that in fact have made housing a critical issue, housing affordability a critical issue. So I don't really I don't really understand. I mean, I understand the economics. I understand the economic interests behind wanting to get into commercial and residential development. I don't see the public value interests for institutions of higher education and institutions of health delivery that live on tax-free statuses to be able to affect the way in which communities move forward. So I would urge council to put economic and community development in its own hands and not to put it in the hands. For example, if they wanted to do housing for homeless populations, you know, that's would have some relationship to the healthcare delivery potential that these institutions have, that would be a different thing. But that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about restaurants. They're talking about shops that probably will cater to very affluent people relative to what the average is in the community. So something about this is just not right. The third point that I want to make is that if this passes tonight, if you guys grant this rezoning tonight, the idea might be that, yeah, they'll come back with plans later on, you know, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 6 months from now, and show you how many, you know, apartments they will build, you know, for single units or 2 bedrooms. They will basically provide all of those details, but none of those are going to change, right, the basic fundamental character of this project as a potentially inappropriate project, given that the city is facing a critical shortage of affordable housing and doesn't need any more upper income housing. I think FNM, I think that LGH, it does great things for the community, provides jobs, pays taxes, they make contributions in addition to tax payments. And I think that that is great and wonderful. And I think that if they continue to be providers of healthcare and supporters of the community that way, I think that's great. I don't think that they need to become commercial and real estate developers. And I hope that council will keep the reins over the future of the city in its own hands. The only way to do that is to deny this rezoning request. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Kalari. I guess now, Ms. Strazo, we'll hear from Tammy Rojas.
Could I just respond to Mr. Kalari's?
Oh, you can, Mr. Lyons. I'm sorry. There wasn't much of a question in there, so I didn't anticipate that, but please.
But there is a need for a correction. We are not developing this. We are not the property developer. We're not pursuing commercial and residential development. That's why we selected Hankin Group. They are and will be the developer of the property. They will be paying taxes on that development as it comes along. Also, we will be and have plans to, shortly after the rezoning is granted, coming back to you with next steps in the plan. So more details regarding the project will be forthcoming shortly, not 6 months, not 6 weeks, but shortly thereafter. So I just wanted to make sure that Antonio understood that there's two points just needed to be corrected. I know we had mentioned it earlier and perhaps he missed it.
And in further clarification, John, thank you for that. This is Brian Burgess again. The land that will be underneath the residential and retail will be sold to Hankin, and Lancaster General will retain no interest in that land going forward.
Thank you both. Ms. Strazo, we do have Ms. Rojas on the call. Ms. Rojas, name, street you live on. Try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, counsel. Yeah.
Okay. Tammy Rojas, 200 block of West Vine Street, Lancaster City. Okay, so I'm doing some reflecting here on what's going on, and I wrote down some notes here. But first, I just kind of want to respond back to what the gentleman just said in the comments to Antonio. I think even just proposing to rezone property and selling it to a real estate does actually make you're making a real estate deal. So let's just be clear about that. With the comments that I'm about to say, it's not against anybody personal, right? It's not against the workers or anything of Penn Medicine LGH, but more along the lines of my problem that I have with the overall system and how we need folks to like fight back against the system, because that's why we're in this debacle that we're in. What we're experiencing here in Lancaster with what Penn Medicine LGH is doing, what UPMC is doing, they're doing this across the country. And that's why the nation is fighting back against hospital closures and other things similar. So, you know, I hear you talking about business offices. My thing with that is, you know, a big part of our healthcare system that's the problem that actually needs cut is administrative. So I don't know why we keep wasting money on things like that. We should be actually advocating to cut that part of our system to improve the system for the betterment of all people. One of the things that I saw in a report, I think it was done by Penn State, that primary care services and dental care providers ratio per residents that we have is actually, we have one of the worst ratios in like the state and nation average. I mean, that's horrible, right? And so I think about, when you think about services you might want to offer, you may want to look at data and start really thinking about what's needed in the community. The other thing I do want to point out is that Penn Medicine is dominant in our county. They're the largest employer. They are dominant with our healthcare. They have been the dominant factor for quite some time. And with us having these reports of having these worst ratios and one of the highest uninsured rates and all these things combined, I kind of wonder if there's decisions being made that probably shouldn't be happening, because it's obviously not working if we're in that kind of state. The other thing that I want to point out with the reality of our system is we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And we're not looking at, we're looking at this as a separate little entity, but we got to look at the fact that two major nonprofit, multi-million, billion-dollar corporations are making similar decisions here in the same community around the same time. And that's going to astronomically affect our community now and in the future. And I think that that is something that needs to be addressed. You need to look at the whole picture. One of the things about our country, right, is that we have one of the worst healthcare systems. We are being significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic compared to other countries. And we ironically have actually one of the worst dental care services across our country, to the point that there was a global charity that used to do care in other countries realizes that the need is actually the greatest in the United States, the richest country on this globe, right? But this is the state of where we're at. And it's because of decisions like this being made that are quickly approved. The same thing with the proposal that's made at UPMC. I will say though, that I love the idea in combination of thinking about healthcare and housing together, because those issues are very interconnected. And that's why we were trying to develop a redevelopment proposal that incorporated that on the St. Joe's property, but also looking at the reality of there is about 40% of renters in Pennsylvania that are facing evictions once these moratoriums rise, right? Once they're gone. And so how many of those are in Lancaster County? And so when we think about future developments, we got to realize also what's nearby down the pike, right? Where are these people going to go when they're out in the streets? How do you think being homeless affects people's health? If you don't have a home, you're not going to be healthy, right? You're living on the streets now. You're not going to be able to take care of yourself as well, and vice versa. And so I really just think we need to think about these things a lot more deeper than what we have been, and really start coming together as a community and think about these things and realize how they're interconnected, and think a lot deeper before we make in-depth decisions like this. You know, I mean, again, not against y'all, but like, let's face it, like Penn Medicine, LGH, they got CEO and top execs that make millions of dollars. You've got UPMC, Jeffrey Romoff makes $9 million a year, private jets, chauffeurs, chefs. And we don't cut from the CEOs and top execs when things need to be done. Instead, we figure out that we need to make real estate deals and cut and not give workers their merit raises. I heard Penn Medicine didn't give their workers merit raises. I hope that changed, and I hope y'all did, right? Like, here we are making these kinds of things, but then we're not taking care of the workers, right? It's all of that combined that really needs to be think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
You know, if I could, Council President,
Mr. Lyons.
We're not UPMC. We're not leaving the city. We're not closing a hospital. We're actually looking to expand services in the city. We're looking to increase access to primary care, just like Ms. Rojas mentioned. We agree with her. We think it's more important that there's investment in healthcare and accessible, affordable, quality healthcare for our community. And that's what this project seeks to do. We are still here in the city and wish to expand so that there's greater access to quality services in the city, not to leave. And we look to bring in a partner like Hankin to invest as well. We're not experts in the development of residential and commercial properties. They are. That's why we're engaging them. We don't want affordability to be a barrier to access to healthcare services. That's where the desire to advance urgent care and primary care in this community is so important to us. I can't speak for the folks over at UPMC and won't do so.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. We have another caller identified, 717-490-1714. Ms. Strazo.
Hi, it's Tony Dastra on New Holland Avenue.
Hey, Tony, you know the deal. Go ahead.
I know the deal. Go ahead. It's okay. I'm catching up on a lot of information. I took note of the comment, we are not UPMC, we're not leaving the city. Great, glad to hear it. You also have a vested interest to stay in the city because it's now a vacuum without LGH. So that, I appreciate the consideration that we're scared you'll leave the city, but really we need you guys to step it up magnitudes more than it's already being stepped up. The LGH plan that I've heard thus far sounds really good if this was 2019. You've mentioned integrating aspects like shops and restaurants, and I'd figure a healthcare industry would know better to make comments like that, not being aware of how COVID is going to destroy those industries or affect them. People are working from home. People don't really feel like taking the risk eating out. Those things seem null and void for me in this conversation. I have concerns about the affordable housing things that has been a massive discussion. The number $1.75 a square foot has been thrown around. And I'm assuming that's an average based on the whole. We've mentioned increasing efficiency units, but when I was doing my job as a property analyst, as a data analyst briefly, I always found the trends to say that the smaller the unit, the more the prices per square foot. So I have considerable issue hearing $1.75, knowing that that variable, in my experience, could be $1 higher for an efficiency. I don't have spreadsheets in front of me to prove this right now. This is just past experience. So on top of that, I have concerns hearing that the sale of the property is going to be delivered to Hankin so that it can appear back on our tax rolls. I think that is not what I want to hear right now. I don't want to hear promises of property taxes increasing in the future. I want to hear an entity so confident in their plan that they're going to give us a bigger payment in lieu of taxes, because that was referenced earlier too. And it's also my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's a renegotiation, but the payment in lieu of taxes has been progressively cut back over the last few years. So that should go back up. There's a magnitude of issues that I'd love to discuss more thoroughly, but the main point I would say in this whole conversation is that we're talking about, for example, right now, defunding the police because of George Floyd protests. It seems like everybody's having trouble saying that. we're talking about reallocating the services that we've expected the police to do that they really shouldn't be doing and putting those elsewhere. LGH is going to be a massive player in our ability to navigate that transition so that people feel safer in our communities. What I might recommend if you want to decrease the price per square foot is maybe dormitory style housing that caters to people who have come into LGH facilities and might have trouble getting rehoused elsewhere because of mental health or addiction issues. That should decrease the price per square foot because you're not building so many bathrooms and kitchens in individual units. You're able to build one giant hall and have people share but still have their private spaces. And on top of that, you can have social workers checking in on residents to make sure they're doing okay and their progress is going well. This rezoning, this is my final point. I just feel that this rezoning needs to be held on a binding plan approved by our community, because it seems like if the rezoning just goes forward, things could change and we don't really have control over that.
Thank you as always, Mr. Dastra.
If I could,
we appreciate your insights.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mr. Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have not decreased our pilot payment, the $1.5 million that we've given to Lancaster City has been in place for, I believe, well, at least 10 years, as many as 15. And if Tony wants to give me his email address, I'm happy to outline all of the payments that we've made in the last 20 years to that. The other thing too is if you, in theory, if you have this property as a taxable property, it would help contribute toward your tax base. I wasn't sure I followed his point there. So,
thank you, Mr. Lyons. All right, I see we have another caller. Tiffany, we've been kind of playing it fast and loose with timing. That's on me, but please start with your name and where you live, and do try to keep your comment to 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi guys, my name is Tiffany. I'm president of the Lancaster County Homeless Union. I live on East Filbert. Why don't you guys think about, instead of all this expensive housing, worry about housing for the poor and everybody down at Ben's Park? Because as far as I know, there is people there that need housing that really nobody's helping. So why don't you make it for the poor instead of all the middle class, high class, pretty much all the richy people? I mean, we don't got money, but we can afford a house if you guys help us do it.
So Lancaster General is a primary funder of Lanco My Home, which is a network of health and human services providers, business leaders, private sector individuals working to reduce homelessness in Lancaster City, and the county through service coordination, advocacy, public education, community organizing, what have you. And they've been working actually with the city as well as Lancaster County, because the number of the homeless population has been growing in the Queen Street corridor, 101 North Queen Street corridor. Again, happy to talk more about the efforts of Lanco My Home. It was the Homeless Coalition, rebranded to that. Happy to talk more about that at a later time, or even have Jen come to Cobble to talk more about all the efforts that they do and how they work with the city and county and other organizations.
Thank you. I am going to, we are at 9 o'clock and this exists as an item on the agenda. So there will be a second opportunity for public comment. I am going to bring this public hearing to a close so we can move into the legislative agenda. Thank you very much, Mr. Burgess, Lyons, Fisher. Did I miss a fourth person?
Mr. Davis, but he's humble enough to be left out.
Well, thank you to Mr. Davis. This hearing has been recorded. The exhibits have been entered and I'm bringing it to a close. Thank you all very much. We now move into our legislative agenda. I'm actually not looking at it at this moment. Wait, we do not have any interim reports of committees of council, do we, Mr. Harris?
We do not, Mr. President.
Great. So we do now move into our legislative agenda. A, ordinances for final passage. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. Administration Bill Number 6, 2020, and an ordinance to change the zoning classification of certain tracts of land on North Queen Street, West Frederick Street, and North Prince Street in the city of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, from Hospital Complex, HC, and High-Density Residential District, R4, to Mixed Use District, MU, and to change the zoning map accordingly. The title, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to table this item this evening.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilor Bakay, could you clarify to which meeting you plan to table that?
Yes, I would propose to table it to the second regular council meeting in August. I don't have a calendar in front of me, so I'm not sure exactly what that date would be.
That would be the 25th.
The 25th.
Okay, so for clarity's sake, the motion on this item currently on the table is that this item be tabled for consideration, that is to say, final passage consideration on Tuesday, August 25th. Is that correct, Councilor Bakay?
That's correct. And could I have a moment just to speak further to my motion as to why?
Just a second, Councilor Bakay. And Councilor Arroyo, that is the motion you understand yourself as seconding?
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Go ahead, Councilor Bakay.
Thank you. I want to, this is obviously, we just had a lengthy hearing on this, and a lot of the questions that I was going to ask this evening were asked by other members of council. And I appreciate that representatives from LGH and Hankin Group were more forthcoming with a lot of those answers to our questions regarding the ultimate use of the site. You know, we're deciding the zoning, but really this is going to lead to the ultimate use of this entire site. But to me, the answers did not seem to fit the needs of our community. But I do believe that we are working in good faith with LGH as a partner in our community, and I would like to give them the opportunity to perhaps engage the community a little bit more. Would like to give them time to explore additional options for creating additional affordable housing, finding other creative solutions, and just giving them the time and space to do that. Additionally, we heard this issue first on July 6th, which was less than a month from today. And frankly, we've had virtual meetings between now and then with various technical issues. And I want to make sure that the public is also giving their input and given every opportunity to do so for that. So at any rate, the idea to come back in a month, giving them the opportunity to explore those options and coming back with hopefully and ultimately an outcome that is more beneficial to all of us would be the reason why I'm asking this to be tabled.
Well, okay, there's a motion and a second. Thank you, Councilor Bakay. As usual, council comments on the motion in question.
I do have a comment, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Councilor Garcia-Molina. Yep.
So I second everything that Councilor Bakay said. I think too, it's an opportunity for us as a body once again to really consider what it is our expectations when zoning changes come before us, because I don't think that LGH has any malice in their intentions of their plan. I hear their vision for a healthy community, and I think that's something that we want to stand behind. I also hear their compliance with the county plans and the plans that existed. And so I don't think that necessarily their work was to go against our desire for affordable housing or to meet the needs of our community. I also agree with their statement of that they are not UPMC. LGH has been committed to our community for a very long time. Between Lanco My Home, Child Alliance, joining forces, they are pillars of our community. And I think that what we're asking for is more time to continue this conversation so that in the end, our community still continues to benefit. But I don't think that it's intentionality behind the Hankin Group or LGH to necessarily contribute to something that would be considered malice. But I think it's an opportunity for us to really align ourselves a little bit better.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Garcia-Molina. other council comments?
I do.
Councilor Craig.
Say that I agree with Councilor Bakay and Councilor Garcia Molina, and I look forward to further discussion and more information. And when the information comes, having it more clear and concise.
All right. Other council comments?
Yes, Mr. President, if I may. Yeah, I just want to kind of second what the other councilors have said, that, I believe LGH and the development group to be partners in this, and just giving us a little bit more time to slow down the process, really have some more conversation, and also engage the community a little bit more would be very helpful as we kind of start to think about this process. As we know, the housing inventory in Lancaster City is very scarce right now. So anytime we're looking at rezoning opportunities, I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and taking everything into consideration and the needs of the community, for the next few decades into consideration as well. So I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion if we're able to kind of slow down the process just a tad bit.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Arroyo.
I just want to say one thing. If there's a possibility, if Mr. Lyons can give us like a number possibly of how many units they really can fit in that area, that would be a good opportunity to bring that forward. That's what I would be interested in.
So, Councilor Diaz, to clarify what you're asking of Mr. Lyons, when you say how many units would be in that area, do you mean the total number of residential units, or are you talking about, as councilors have referenced, a possibility of a number of units that would fall under IZ or affordable housing?
Affordable housing, but I also would like the complete total. I want to know, for example, how the traffic is going to be, what we're looking at traffic wise, how many people are going to be residing and working there? Because we already have enough issues with Queen Street since I work there and I have to drive that road, and I know how hard it is to get in and out of the parking. So we're looking at safety along with having affordable housing and what other entities are going to be in there.
Right. Yeah, actually, this is a good opportunity to note before we go forward. I don't think it affects anyone's decision making here, and I do not believe anything rises to the level of conflict of interest, which is designed in Pennsylvania law. But for my part, I will mention that I have recently accepted a position with Lanco My Home, which is under the umbrella of LGH, but there's no specific, what's the language in the law, pecuniary benefit to yours truly or any other council member based on this rezoning, but just in the interest of full disclosure as we're having that conversation, and as Councilor Diaz mentioned. So thank you for that, Councilor Diaz. Comments from the public, and I guess I will give, Councilor Soto.
Yes, I just want to share that I agree with everything that my fellow councilors have said at this meeting, but I also want to stress, being down this road before, that this is supposed to be a rezoning hearing on property that is being requested by an owner. Even though we do have some input on what the end use of that property was going to be, the final vote should be based on the rezoning issue. And that's what we should consider. We should be voting ourselves on. There's going to be ample time later to make decisions on what may or may not go on the property. But this is a rezoning vote. And that's all I have to say. Thank you,
Councilor Soto. So comments from the public, but I will, I will give sort of first courtesy to Mr. Lyons or anybody on his team if he wishes to address the motion.
No, that's okay. Thanks.
All right, great. Comments from there may be additional council comments, but I'll take a moment here for comments from the public and I'll wait my habitual 30 seconds. Okay. Hearing no comments from the public, which is maybe surprising, Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. A vote on the motion to table. Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Ms. Baker?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina?
Aye.
Mr. Soto?
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell?
Aye. All right. The motion is tabled. Mr. Lyons at Alia, we will hopefully see you back here in this digital space on the 28th. And of course, I and other council members are available to you if you'd like to be in additional communication in the meantime. I do want to thank you for LGH's ongoing commitment to the community and for taking the time to answer and engage all of our questions as well as those of the public. I know these meetings can be grueling.
All good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. All right, Mr. Burgess, Fisher, and Davis as well. So moving right along with our legislative agenda, Administration Bill number 7, 2020.
Yes, Mr. President. An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, referred to as the COVID-19 Outdoor Retail Ordinance, establishing provisions pursuant to which individuals and entities may receive a license from the City of Lancaster for the use for street right-of-way to conduct retail operations, establishing the conditions for operating such outdoor retail operations, allowing the Director of Public Works to designate from time to time areas within the City of Lancaster as areas reserved for outdoor retail operations, authorizing the Director to promulgate rules and regulations for the issuance of licenses for the establishment of public areas for outdoor retail operations, and for the use and utilization of outdoor retail areas and public retail areas, establishing penalties for violation of the ordinance, providing for the enforcement of the ordinance by police officers, the health officer, and all code officers of the City of Lancaster, and providing for the severability of the ordinance. Title, Mr. President.
My favorite part is when you say the title, Mr. President. Anyway, I'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, Mr. Campbell, sorry.
Hello, thank you very much for hearing us on the, I believe this is the second reading for this rulemaking. This is following our very successful outdoor dining ordinance that allowed for restaurants to occupy spaces in the public right-of-way to continue to serve the people of the City of Lancaster throughout the city. That ordinance was specifically related to dining and beverages, and this ordinance allows for the utilization of retail, the ability for people to sell things in front of their establishments or with the permission of nearby or adjacent property owners in front of other properties as well. The regulations are very similar to that of the outdoor dining. It requires that there be a 6-foot passage along the sidewalks, along that public right-of-way for the public to walk. It allows for protection of adjacent people, making sure that it's not too close to certain public conveniences such as fire hydrants, ADA accessible ramps, etc., and allows for people to, or retailers who currently have licenses to do their retail work to sell their wares out on the street. The actual exchange of money would still be required to take place within the confines of the retail establishment, not out on the street. But this would allow for retailers to, wherever there is retail establishment in the city of Lancaster, to petition or to submit an application for permit to utilize the public right of way.
Okay. Council comments.
I do have a question, Council President.
Councilor
Campbell, why wouldn't they be allowed to do the payment on the street?
That's a very good question, and it does become a bit of a challenge if you are allowing people to exchange money in the space, which is in an adjacent space. It was more for a matter of security and a matter of ensuring that the purpose for which the retail is taking place is benefiting and is directed to the retail owner.
I appreciate that. Before at a previous meeting, we had talked about how public spaces would be considered. So in terms of a micro business who doesn't have physical property, being able to ask for like it to be permissible, we had agreed that that was something that would be considered. How would that be considered at this point if they don't own a physical space, but we would be considering them for the application, but they couldn't take payment on the street?
So if I understand your question correctly, there's two parts to it. One is if I am a retailer and I have an establishment already and an address on the street, but I might be using space adjacent to my space or even a little bit further down the street to show my wares. The way that might work is that you might either have a person, one of your clerks, showing the wares to people out on the street and then directing them. Once they take that ware, they would be directed into the retail establishment to be able to pay for it.
Yeah, so that does help. I guess I'm having trouble with my wording today. But so we had a conversation previously about if I don't physically own a store, but because the ordinance says that public spaces would be under consideration. So if I were to ask the city for permission, not as I don't have a storefront, but I would like to sell my wares in a public space, we had talked about beforehand that would be permissible.
Yes. So
but
that is
how does that coincide?
So that is very similar to the public dining aspect of the outdoor dining ordinance. So there are areas in the city of Lancaster that have been designated for public dining, where people can purchase their food from somewhere and be able to have access to a common dining area. We foresee the possibility of having public retail areas as well. And because this does allow for the provision of promulgating regulations related to that, that would be on a case-by-case basis to confirm how could that retail operation actually take place in the public retail aspect of the open retail ordinance.
So it would still be on the table.
Yes, that is correct. That is definitely the case.
That's it.
Thank you, Councilor Garcia Molina. Any other council comments? From the public? I'll wait my customary 30 seconds. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Roya,
Aye.
Ms. Baker,
Aye.
Ms. Craig,
Aye.
Ms. Diaz,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina,
Aye.
Mr. Soto,
Aye.
and President Smith Waddell.
Aye. All right, moving right along. Resolutions. Council Resolution number 39, 2020, calling on Congress to, sorry, Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, imploring Congress to provide direct emergency support for the nation's local governments.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. This one is pretty straightforward. We are all in times of economic crisis, and we are all here at city government, both council and the administration, are trying to frankly provide ways to provide more to a public that needs more with less. But the majority of the taxing power in the United States is with the federal government, who has the power to provide additional assistance both to local governments and to any individuals who may be watching it. And frankly, as all of our government, that's a responsibility that I felt that they needed to take on. So I had Mr. Harris draft this resolution just to call for additional rounds of support for local governments with the assistance of Councilor Bakay, the chair of our Finance Committee. Council comments.
Mr. President, I have a comment.
Please.
So I attended a webinar today from the National League of Cities that specifically addressed the financial forecast of cities of our size, some slightly larger, some smaller, and the fact that they have not received any direct funding from our federal government, and what that is doing to those communities. And so we are not alone in this. There are cities all over the United States that employ people that provide these services, and we're all feeling the crunch. And in fact, in Pennsylvania, we're forecasted to feel the most impact from revenue losses because of COVID-19 for lots of reasons. And so I appreciate you and Mr. Harris taking the time to draft this resolution, and I'm hopeful that our federal elected officials hear our cries.
Thank you, Councilor Bakay. Any others? From the public, I'll wait my customary 30 seconds.
Hello? Can you hear me? Not or okay. Sorry,
Yes.
I'm getting used to this setup, so I apologize. Not tech savvy here. Yeah, I just had a couple questions.
Hold on a second, Tammy. Yeah. We still need your name and where you live, and 3 minutes, please.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sure. Tammy, 200 block of West Vine Street.
Okay.
Yeah. So, question. So this is a resolution. Is this I'm just trying to understand, is this literally going to be set to the go? Is this a process we're doing to apply for funds? Is this kind of a way that we're utilizing this resolution to express our need and push them to kind of hear the story of our need through this resolution? I guess I'm trying to understand that purpose. And then two, if that is the case, is this something that literally I think we need to think outside the box on this and many other issues? Do we need to rally the community and the people across the state to put pressure? We got to do what we got to do. If we're really in this together, we got to start proving it and get creative. But I also want to understand what the thing is with the resolution.
Yeah. I will take a swing at answering, and then Councilor Bakay can as well, should she like. The purpose of this ordinance, or of this resolution rather, is not to articulate all of the needs that our community has. And I think that there's space for and more resolutions coming to address those issues, but specifically to urge our congressional representatives to, yes, direct more funding to the city of Lancaster specifically, but really small municipalities all over who do not have a lot in the way of revenue options. And yes, it will be passed. Well, if it is passed, let me not make any presumptions, but yes, it will then be sent to our representatives.
Okay, so can I ask a follow-up question just to make sure I got clarity?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of like a resolution stating we need these funds for the city, much like we would like for tax revenue, where we would disperse this for the things that the city operates.
Yes, Mr. Harris, would you, if you're looking, hold on, I'll pull the text of it. I'm as capable of that as anyone else. Give me just a moment. Yes, so I'll be specific about 2 lines in particular. Pennsylvania is projected to be the hardest hit of the 50 states, with municipalities facing revenue losses of more than 40%. And whereas 3/4 of the nation's cities have already been forced to make spending cuts, 1/3 of cities have laid off workers, totaling more than 1.5 million public sector jobs lost since March of this year. And asking the federal government to specifically address that with small cities across the United States with additional funding. As you may or may not know, Ms. Rojas, while communities over 500,000 in size did receive direct CARES Act funding, so for example, the county, communities of our size, or like Johnstown, Erie, York, Reading, Lebanon, et cetera, did not receive any of this kind of funding. And so this resolution is in joining with legislatures in those communities to echo the call, as along with the Pennsylvania Municipal League and other communities across Pennsylvania, to our congressional representatives for that funding specifically.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you. I'll wait a few more seconds. Okay, hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Roya.
Aye.
Ms. Bakay.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia Molina.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Smith-Waddell.
Aye. All right, that brings us to our second public comment period. This is open for issues not already discussed in the meeting. Duration of comments is limited to 3 minutes. Ms. Rojas, yes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the reason why I kind of asked those questions in the last thing is because I wanted to have clarity before I brought this comment to y'all. But there was a couple things that kind of came out of this meeting that I just want to address. That when it comes to like Penn Medicine and LGH, right, we have to understand that the folks we talk to in the rooms, right, the folks that are in our community, they're not what we refer to when we mention Penn Medicine or UPMC, right? I mean, there are corporations, so they're definitely separate from the people. And it's also Penn Medicine. It's no longer the LGH that has been in our community for a long time. So we should take reflection on that too, and that decisions come from those above. One of the things I wanted to kind of bring up and ask is, one, we had emailed our Put People First PA's COVID-19 demands to y'all twice. It was both city and county government. As far as we know, up to this date, one person has endorsed them, and that was Janet Diaz. And I want to say thank you for that, Janet Diaz. And also, like, if you look at those demands, right, with what we're demanding of our state, and what we're demanding of Governor Wolf to endorse the PPC's platform for the things we need in times of COVID-19. I guess I'm just wondering why, like, no one else has endorsed them if y'all haven't. What are your thoughts on endorsing them? I mean, I understand, like, right, like you're thinking, okay, it's just a signature, or even creating a resolution based on our COVID-19 demands, or the Poor People's Campaign Jubilee platform. Like, I understand that, like, it's not legislation, that you guys can't put this into law, but having that gains us like power when taking on the county and state government, because it shows that our city government is behind us and realizes that these things are our needs right now. And our COVID-19 demands go beyond just healthcare. I mean, there's demands for protections for small businesses, for those who are incarcerated right now, healthcare workers. I mean, all kinds of things that I encourage you all to look at if you haven't looked at that. And I guess, one, I would like to hear some sort of response in regards to the ideas around those demands. But I also wanted to bring up that I know we're going to talk about this deeper, but the UPMC, proposal of, rezoning and redeveloping that. One thing that I want to leave y'all thought in mind, and I know you guys are going to be meeting Monday to discuss this, is that land where that hospital sits, right? That has been a community resource for 135 years and has primarily served the poor and dispossessed in our community if you look back at its history. And when I look at the graph from a Sky Point view on what's proposed and where, I see segregation. I see the history of our country repeating itself, and I literally, like, brought me to tears, because what I see is the poor and dispossessed being kicked off our land of something that has served us for over a century, so a bunch of rich white men can come in and make profit, and that is very painful to witness. I was born and raised in Lancaster, and this is the only home I've ever known, and I care so deeply. And I want you all to really think about, y'all can get creative when it comes to saving the Clipper Stadium and the Marriott, with changing how Chris is operating and everything else. And I want you to get creative and stand by your community on the issue of the redevelopment of St. Joseph Hospital. I am begging you. We have the opportunity that if we do this from the bottom up, grassroots, come together as a community, we can make something beautiful happen there in its redevelopment. I think about that because we are building towards wanting to have a human rights house somewhere in Lancaster County. And that development is coming from the poor and dispossessed, organizing, partnering with nonprofits, grassroots fundraising. We are poor, but yet we are envisioning something beautiful. And we can do something like that there. We can do something that's a combination of housing and healthcare. I mean, you heard Penn Medicine LGH say tonight how that's a need. We've been saying that for over a year, and we really need you to, for real, just listen. Please listen. That property, that land means so much to the people in the community, and we built that hospital with our blood, sweat, and tears, the working class of this community over many generations. I want you to think deeply on that.
You're muted.
Every time. Are there any other comments from the public before we move to the other comments this evening? Okay. I do not, hearing none, we do not have either the mayor or the chief of staff. Mr. Harris, you weren't sent a printed report, were you, or a text report?
I was not, no, Mr. President.
Oh, I hear, I see Ms. King. Jess, do you want to go ahead?
There is no mayor's report tonight. Just wanted
Beautiful.
to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Then we move to the report of the president of council. I don't have a specific report, and I don't have a specific reaction as of yet to what we're going to see, based on the items that we've considered on the agenda today. But I think it is important, and that tonight's meeting does display that this is a different city council than we've had previously, just in terms of how the seven of us are able to think and converse about issues, even in this public forum. And I think I'm really proud, if I'm allowed to be proud, of the level of diligence and thoughtfulness from all sides that came into the conversation this evening. So thank you to each and every one of you for what you provided in the meeting tonight. It's an honor to work with each of you. I will now open the floor up to other counselors to make comments before we adjourn. Hearing none, I will, per her message, direct you all to Ms. Rojas' email, which was sent to us about a week ago. If you would like to review it again, it was sent previously at the end of May and is certainly at least worth reading. All right, with that, I will hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Sorry, lost my train of thought. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President, fellow councilors.
Thank you, Pete. Take care.